Extensor carpi radialis brevis originates on the common extensor tendon of the lateral epicondyle of the humerus and inserts at the base of the third metacarpal. Extensor carpi radialis longus originates from the lateral supracondylar ridge of the humerus just above that lateral condyle and inserts at the base of the second metacarpal, which is just underneath the pointer finger right about there. Right about there. Extensor carpi ulnaris is going to originate from the common extensor tendon on the lateral epicondyle of the humerus and insert at the base of the fifth metacarpal, just underneath the pinky. Extensor digiti minimi is going to originate from the common extensor tendon on the lateral epicondyle of the humerus, and it will insert at the base of the fifth metacarpal just underneath the pinky. Extensor digitorum is also going to originate from the common extensor tendon on the lateral epicondyle of the humerus, and it will insert at the base of the middle and distal phalanges of the second through fifth fingers, so every finger except your thumb. Extensor indicus, or why our pointer finger is called our pointer finger, originates from the posterior surface of the distal shaft of the ulna and the interosseous membrane. Okay, I'm back. I had to check my notes. It is going to insert at the tendon of digitorum at the level of second metacarpal. Flexor carpi ulnaris will originate from the common flexor tendon on the medial epicondyle of the humerus down to the posterior surface of that proximal 2/3 of the ulna. It will insert at the pisiform, the hook of the hamate, and base of the fifth metacarpal. Sorry for breaking order here. Back on track with flexor carpi radialis, which will originate from the common flexor tendon on medial epicondyle of the humerus, and it's going to insert at the bases of the second and third metacarpal, just under the pointer and middle finger. Flexor digitorum profundus, or deep flexor digitorum, will originate from the anterior and medial surface of the proximal 3/4 of the ulna, and it will insert at the base of the distal phalanx of the second through fifth fingers, so excluding the thumb again here. Flexor digitorum superficialis will originate from the common flexor tendon on the medial epicondyle of the humerus, the ulna collateral ligament, the coronoid process of the ulna, the interosseous membrane of the proximal shaft of the radius. It will insert at the sides of the middle phalanx of the second through fifth fingers. Little cut here so I could demonstrate where the sides of the middle phalanx are. The anconeus will originate on the lateral epicondyle of the humerus. Remember anatomical position here. And it will insert on the olecranon process and the posterior proximal aspect of the ulna. Brachialis, just deep to the biceps brachii here, will originate from the distal half of the anterior surface of humerus, and it will insert at the olecranon process and proximal surface of the ulna. Brachioradialis will originate from the lateral supracondylar ridge of the humerus. You can see that about there, and it will insert at the styloid process of the radius, the lateral bone of the forearm. Pronator teres will originate from the common flexor tendon of the medial epicondyle of the humerus and the coronoid process of the ulna. It's going to insert in the middle of the lateral surface of the radius. So when you look at this muscle, you can see how it pulls to pronate the forearm. Pronator quadratus, named for its ability to pronate and having four sides, will originate from the medial anterior surface of the distal ulna, and it will insert into the lateral anterior surface of the distal radius. Supinator will originate from the lateral epicondyle of the humerus, the radial collateral ligament, the annular ligament, and the supinator crest of the ulna. It will insert in the anterior lateral surface of the proximal 1/3 of the radial shaft, named for its ability to supinate. Palmaris longus will originate from the common flexor tendon of the medial epicondyle of the humerus. It will insert in the flexor retinaculum and palmar aponeurosis. So you can see here when they flex their hand with the thumb and pinky in opposition, that little tendon in the middle pops up. Fun fact, not everybody has this muscle. Pardon the brief hold here in the biceps brachii video. I must not have cut this one down quite as much as I wanted to. Okay, biceps brachii will originate from the coracoid process of the scapula and the supraglenoid tubercle, and it will insert in the tuberosity of the radius and aponeurosis of biceps brachii. Said that weird. Biceps. Coracobrachialis will originate from the coracoid process of the scapula, and it will insert in the medial surface of the mid-humeral shaft. Okay, the packet doesn't break this down as much, but I wanted to. The anterior deltoid will originate from the lateral half of the clavicle and insert at the deltoid tuberosity on the humerus. The lateral deltoid will originate from the acromion process and insert at the deltoid tuberosity on the humerus. Posterior deltoid will originate from the spine of the scapula and insert at the deltoid tuberosity on the humerus. Latissimus dorsi will originate from the inferior angle of the scapula, the spinous process of the last 6 thoracic vertebrae, the bottom 3 or 4 ribs, and the thoracolumbar aponeurosis, and it's going to insert around the medial humerus into the intertubercular groove of the humerus or the bicipital groove. Levator scapula, named for its ability to elevate the scapula, will originate from the transverse process of C1 through 4, palpate and count them with me, and it is going to insert in the superior angle of the scapula to the superior spine of the scapula, kind of just that top right angle that the scapula makes. Pectoralis major. So there are 2 portions of this muscle, the clavicular and the sternal. Some would argue costal as well, but we'll just stick with the 2. The pec major will originate from the medial half of the clavicle and the sternum and cartilage of costal ribs and insert in the crest of the greater tubercle of the humerus. This muscle is kind of fan-shaped and the insertion crosses over itself at the shoulder. Pectoralis minor will originate from ribs 3, 4, and 5 and will insert into the medial surface of the coracoid process. So this muscle is deep to pec major. It's kind of got that finger-like serratus shape. So you can see me here kind of press on the pec and then go underneath. I shorten the pec and then go underneath pec major to get at pec minor. So I chose to do rhomboid major and minor in the same video here. The origin will be the spinous processes of C7 through T5, and the insertion will be the medial border of the scapula from spine of scapula to the inferior angle, with rhomboid minor being the more superior, smaller rhomboid. It's going to originate from that upper C7 and insert into more of around the spine of the scapula. Infraspinatus will originate at the infraspinous fossa of the scapula, the big flat part underneath the spine of the scapula. It will insert at the greater tubercle of the humerus, the most prominent portion of the lateral superior humerus. Subscapularis, named for being underneath or deep to the scapula, will originate at the subscapular fossa of the scapula and insert at the lesser tubercle of the humerus, kind of on that medial side there. You can't really feel this too well from the prone position because it comes from the anterior portion of the scapula. Supraspinatus will originate from the supraspinous fossa and insert at the greater tubercle of the humerus. Slipped off there. Out to that greater tubercle. Teres minor originates at the upper 2/3 of the lateral border of scapula and inserts at the greater tubercle of the humerus. This is the one that does lateral rotation of the shoulder. So it goes around the back side of the humerus, posterior for you anatomy nerds. Serratus anterior will originate from the external surface of the first 8 or 9 ribs and will insert at the anterior aspect of the medial border of the scapula. Subclavius, under the clavicle, originates at the first rib and cartilage and will insert at the inferior surface of the lateral third of the clavicle. I adduct the arm here to get a little bit better of a feel of where subclavius is. Teres major, don't panic, I didn't forget it, will originate at the inferior angle and lower third of the scapula and will insert at the crest of the lesser tubercle of the humerus. This one is responsible for medial rotation, so it will go kind of through the armpit on the medial aspect of the humerus. Trapezius, which is a lot bigger of a muscle than it gets credit for, will originate at the occipital protuberance, the medial portion of the superior nuchal line, and the ligament nuchae, and C7 through T12. So all the way down to the bottom of the thoracic vertebrae. It will insert the lateral third of the clavicle and actually wrap up and around to get to that lateral third of the clavicle over top of the scapula. It will insert at the acromion process and the spine of the scapula. Okay, triceps brachii. We've got the long head, which will originate from the infraglenoid tubercle. We've got the lateral head, which will originate from the posterior surface of the proximal half of the humerus. And then we've got the medial head, which will originate from the posterior surface of the distal half of the humerus. And all of these will insert at the olecranon process of the ulna. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found this video to be educational or helpful.